welcome to this explainer. I want you to imagine, just for a second, being completely swallowed up by the wilderness. No roads, no people, and a severe storm rapidly moving in. Well, today we're looking at the incredibly true story of Ethan Carter, and we're going to explore the ultimate stakes of survival when you are just entirely cut off from the rest of the world.
6. I really want you to sit with that number for a moment. For 6 grueling days, rescue teams scoured an absolutely unforgiving mountain range. You had helicopters flying loops over the trees, tracking dogs sniffing every possible trail, and absolutely zero clues. For 6 entire days, his family's hope was, understandably, fading fast.
Okay, let's dive into this. Because on the morning of that 6th day, the impossible actually happened. A really weak emergency radio signal, just a tiny, unexpected blip, flickered on a rescue center screen for a few brief seconds. But you know what? That fleeting moment was enough to prove one absolutely crucial thing. Ethan was still alive.
All right, Section 1, one wrong step.
Let's flash back to 3 days before the search even began. 29-year-old Ethan Carter set out on a meticulously planned solo mountain trek. And honestly, he wasn't an amateur. His backpack inventory was spot on. He had food, water, a first aid kit, a flashlight, and an emergency radio. He checked the forecast and the weather looked perfect. But the mountains kind of make their own rules, right? Without warning, that perfect day turned into a blinding storm. Thick clouds rolled right in, high winds battered the trees, and heavy rain turned this narrow trail into completely slippery mud. And then, out of nowhere, the ground completely collapses beneath his feet. Ethan took this sudden, terrifying fall down a steep, rocky slope, crashing hard into a narrow, completely silent valley below. When he finally opened his eyes, his right ankle was badly swollen, and his cell phone? Completely destroyed in the impact. You really have to consider the stark contrast here. On one hand, sure, his basic survival gear survived the fall, but on the other hand, he faced this terrifying reality. No phone, no roads, and absolutely no people. Put yourself in his boots for a second. Ask yourself, what would I do in that exact moment? Especially when the reality sets in that absolutely no one on Earth knows exactly where you are. Which brings us to Section 2, the first priority. So, as daylight vanished and freezing temperatures rapidly approached the valley, Ethan really had to fight the overwhelming urge to panic. He anchored himself to a survival expert rule. Panic wastes energy. Survival begins with clear thinking. This was absolutely crucial. It served as the core mindset that anchored every single one of his immediate actions, because he knew, for sure, if he panicked, he literally wouldn't make it through the night. Let's break down the micro-decisions he made to secure shelter. Within 30 minutes, he used a branch to craft a walking stick, hobbled over to a rock overhang to block the wind, and managed to build a fire using the waterproof matches from his kit. And that night, temperatures dropped near freezing. Hearing these strange snapping branches and unknown movements out in the pitch black, Ethan actually stayed awake, tightly gripping a burning stick just to ward off whatever was out there in the freezing night.
Now on to Section 3, not alone in the woods.
As the sun rose the next morning, reality really set in. With only a meager 2-day food supply in his pack, every single decision from here on out was quite literally a matter of life and death. Let's see how this builds his strategy. He opened his map, relying on one fundamental survival rule: water often leads to people. So, enduring agonizing pain in his swollen ankle, Ethan dragged himself eastward for hours until he finally heard it: the faint, beautiful sound of a flowing stream. But just as a massive wave of relief hit him, he looked down at the mud. Fresh, wet, bare tracks. And they were heading in his exact direction. Just imagine this sudden spike in adrenaline. I mean, seriously, what do you do when you suddenly realize you aren't alone out there? And this right here brilliantly illustrates his incredible discipline. Detail by detail, he did not run. He deliberately stepped away from the stream, started talking loudly, and just kept moving. Suddenly, a loud growl echoed from directly behind him. But Ethan refused to look back. He just kept making noise and kept walking until the forest finally went silent. He safely escaped the encounter, but man, his problems were actually just beginning. Moving into Section 4, the final attempt. To make matters so much worse, heavy rains had swollen the stream, trapping him. And then the crushing blow. A rescue helicopter actually passed in the distance, totally blind to his desperate waves. Let's walk through this timeline to really show the compounding exhaustion. Day 1, the devastating fall. Day 2, narrowly escaping that bear. By day 5, his food had completely vanished, his body was severely weakened, and he missed that helicopter. Which leads us to the terrifying reality of day 6. 6 harrowing days of his body and mind just completely breaking down. On the evening of that 5th day, heading into the 6th, Ethan pulled out his emergency radio. The battery was almost entirely empty. First press of the button? Absolutely nothing. Second press? Just static. With one desperate final attempt, he pressed it again. A tiny red light flashed. He sent one last, incredibly weak signal into the darkening sky, just whispering to himself, "Please, let someone hear me."
And incredibly, miles away inside a rescue coordination center, a radio operator stared at a screen and miraculously caught that fleeting blip. It was enough. The rescue team instantly shifted their entire search area. Meanwhile, as the sun rose on day 6, an utterly exhausted Ethan gathered these heavy stones and broken branches, meticulously spelling out massive letters on a rocky hillside. H-E-L-P. The hours just dragged on into the late afternoon, and then a faint, rhythmic thumping broke the silence. The distant sound of helicopter blades grew louder and louder. Ethan rushed out into the open, desperately waving his bright orange emergency blanket at the sky. The chopper flew past, and for a terrifying second, he thought they missed him again. But then it turned. It circled once, then a second time. Ethan dropped to his knees. After 6 days of absolute hell, he knew he was finally found.
Section 5, How to Survive. What's really interesting here is how hospital doctors later confirmed he escaped without any life-threatening injuries, specifically because he didn't just rely on luck. Let's recap these crucial, actionable micro-decisions that transformed a potential tragedy into a phenomenal explainer of human endurance. Look at what saved him. He stayed calm instead of panicking. He built shelter immediately. He conserved his energy. He followed fresh water. And he took the chance to send that final dying signal. As Ethan later realized, and I absolutely love this profound quote, he hit the nail on the head. Survival isn't about being fearless. It's about making the next right decision even when you're scared. Because sometimes hope doesn't suddenly arrive with a miraculous helicopter. Sometimes hope simply begins with a single, terrifying choice to just keep moving forward. Which leaves us with a final, provocative thought. If you were stripped of absolutely everything but your next decision, would you know what to choose? It really forces you to reflect on your own resilience and preparedness, doesn't it? Well, thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. If you're fascinated by the human spirit, be sure to seek out more incredible stories of courage and endurance. Catch you in the next one.